Hey crafters, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to show you how to make a striking monochromatic card. Hope you enjoy! So I started by using my anti-static tool on a piece of white paper that is slightly smaller than my 5x7" finished card. And then I secured it into my stamp positioner and added the tree goddess Luna and the moon stamp, both from Lavinia stamps. And I stamped these in the Nocturne VersaFine Clair ink. Now it's important to use a stamp positioner for this technique because you will need to stamp multiple times to ensure that you have enough ink on your paper for the embossing powder, and also to ensure that both your black and white cards are stamped in exactly the same place. But that will make sense as we go on. So I stamped this twice, and then I'm going to use a clear embossing powder over both of these stamped images. Now, if you prefer, you can always use clear sticky ink and then black embossing powder, but I find that using the black ink gives you a darker and sharper image. So then I just repeated the process using a black piece of paper and the Versamark clear sticky ink. And then once I'd stamped this twice and made sure there was lots of ink on my stamped images, I used white embossing powder over top of these stamped areas. And I double stamped this as well just to make sure there was lots of ink on my black paper. Now the white embossing powder that I'm using is from Wow, and it's the opaque bright white. And I find it gives the most contrast on black paper. Now because these are solid images, these two stamps, I wanted to make sure they were completely stamped before I removed them from my stamp positioner. And you'll notice that the moon there didn't pick up very much ink, partly because my Versamark ink is well loved. So I will come back and add some more ink onto that moon in a minute. But first I'm going to heat set both the white and the black backgrounds. So once it's heat set and it's had a moment to cool down, I'm going to add some more anti-static powder over that moon and then just re-stamp the moon image with the Versamark. And this is when it's handy to have a stamp positioner so that everything lines up perfectly. And then I will add some more embossing powder and heat set this. And just because there's a few areas that haven't been covered by that embossing powder, I'm going to use my embossing pen to fill in those holes. And normally I wouldn't be this fussy, but since it's a major focal point of the card, I think it's important that it's completely covered with embossing powder. And you'll notice that I like to heat from the back first because I find that that stops the embossing powder from flying off the stamped image. So now that the tree goddess Luna and the moon are completely solid images, you can see how beautiful they look. And I did try this with white pigment ink and clear embossing powder, but it came out more gray rather than white. So I prefer using this method so you get this stark contrast between black and white. Now to fill in the bottom of the scene, I'm going to use one of the wild berry stamps. This stamp comes with a smaller and a larger stamp. This one is the larger one, and I will use the smaller one later on. And I'm going to stamp it along the bottom 3 times so it looks like there's some foliage at the bottom. And I love how this stamp naturally lends itself to this monochromatic look. So on the white card, I stamped it in the VersaFine Nocturne and then used the clear embossing powder. And then on the black card, I used the white embossing powder with the Versamark ink. And then I heat set these. And I didn't worry about using my stamp positioner for this stamp because it's not as important that both scenes are identical at the bottom. As long as the main images are in the right place, then the rest of it is fine. Now once I have heat embossed both the black and the white versions of these cards, I'm going to wipe off the extra anti-static powder on the black card especially, and then I'm going to trim these scenes. And I'm going to go from the top left corner to the bottom right on a diagonal so that there's a perfect division of the two sides. And I'll repeat this on both the black and the white version of the card. And then I'm going to do the same thing with a piece of paper that's 5 by 7 inches, a black one and a white one, so that there's one that is black on the top and white on the bottom. And I'll just use some double-sided tape to secure these in place. And then one that is the reverse. So then I'm going to take one white piece and one black piece and flip them over and make sure they're perfectly lined up so that the corners are intact and there's no gaps in between the two sides, and then I'll use my double-sided tape to secure these. I'll use my double-sided tape on the back of this, and I won't remove this strip in the center that's keeping the white and the black piece together. Instead, I'll put one on the opposite side, which I will remove. And then once I've removed the tape, I will put this on the 5 by 7 inch piece with the white on the black and the black on the white. And the main thing with this is that you line up the diagonal lines. And then I will repeat this on the other card as well. For a sentiment, I'm going to use one from the sentiment set. It's called the Heartfelt Sentiments, and this one says, just for you. So I'll do one with white embossing powder on a black background and one with black Nocturne ink on a white background. And then as before, I will heat set these. Then I will trim them and give them a white and black border. And I decided to put these sentiments at the top left. There's a little bit of a space between the moon and the tree goddess Luna. So it fits in perfectly there. And again, I lined up the sentiment with that diagonal. So the top left corner of the sentiment fits nicely on that diagonal line. So it looks pleasing to the eye. And then I put both of these cards onto a 5 by 7 inch card base. And I put them on with some more double-sided tape. On the inside of the card, I used the Nocturne ink and added the smaller of the two wild berry stamps and just stamped these multiple times in the upper left and the lower right corners. And I left plenty of room to add a sentiment later on. And just to make sure there was no ink on the left-hand side of the card, I just put a scrap piece of paper there, and then I stamped the wild berry on the top left as well. And I did this the same for both of the cards. So you have a nice splash of color when you open up the cards. And then once that's all done, you can see the two finished monochromatic cards, the black and white one and the white and black one. And it's great to make two cards at once. Just perfect. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found this video inspiring. If you haven't already, please subscribe so that you're notified whenever I post a new video. Have a crafty day!